Tactical. Stephen Jekyll here, and also Jeff Walters. Okay, we are your hosts for this episode, episode 8. Our co-host Scott McPherson is actually on holiday right now, so it's just going to be us tonight. Tonight, we are covering the concepts of the practical training in forms. I'm sure we're going to ruffle some feathers up here tonight, but that's part of the discussion, and that's how you find the true essence of whatever you.
And these talks that we're having, these discussions, we're so open to having people comment in a healthy way. Please be respectful, but right or wrong, whatever we put on here, that's okay, because we want to hear the feedback on people who may have some real practical experience and just people's thoughts in general.
Exactly. And that's the thing. This is a community, and the only way that we grow as a community is if we all help each other out.
Exactly.
So tonight we're going to be talking about forms. And, that's funny. When we think about forms, I'm going to guess, Jeff, would you agree with me that the first thing everybody thinks about is kata? That's the first thing.
When you mention forms,
in martial arts.
So, yeah, I would say that's probably the consensus.
And that's like legitimately everyone says, oh, that's how it is, and blah, blah, blah. Well, the thing is, that's not exactly the full detail, and we're going to talk about that tonight. So
when you say that, when you say that's how it is, I assume you're talking about that's how people, they say katas on video or something, they just assume that's how it is on that, that people who do katas would think it is on the street or something.
Exactly. And what's funny is that I guess it's actually really appropriate because the Olympics are going on right now, and karate just became an official Olympic sport. And one of the core categories is kata, is form.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's been judo for 70 years.
Exactly. It finally took, I'm actually shocked it took this long to get there.
Right.
But when we're looking at forms, so many, it's almost as if you either hate them or you love them.
Yeah.
And you either have the really gung-ho ones that say, yes, there's so much value to training in forms. And on the opposite side of the coin, you said, yeah, no, that's crap.
Right. Right.
But there's obviously more. What do you think about when you think of forms?
So you and I kind of touched on this off camera for a few minutes, and I believe my understanding is you're going to have people who think forms, katas, and aikido, we call them aiki taiso, what we do. Boxing has the shadow boxing. So some people might look at that as say, that's a waste of time, or that's not necessary, or that's not reality, perhaps. So my thoughts on that is that forms are important because I think every art, martial art or otherwise, but for now, martial arts, every martial art has a form of conditioning or just constant drilling of repetitive training. And what this does is it gets into your muscle memory. So let's take karate, for example, which is what you've done for a long time, Stephen.
Yeah.
And you go through your katas. I'm sorry that I don't know these right now. One day I'll probably learn, but you go through your katas, and it's getting into your muscle memory. So when you're in a real situation and you're, let's say your kata comes out into an actual self-defense technique, is it going to be perfect like the way you did in the mat? No. You're maybe the person you were training with, it may have come out smooth during all that training on the mat, but in reality, it may not go exactly as you planned. So I think you need to be prepared to have something else ready, or step back and reassess and, get out there if you can. Of course, that's always the first rule of self-defense is go home safe.
Yeah. And, you bring up a really interesting point where you say muscle memory. I'm just immediately, I first think about saying, you ever hear that saying, practice makes perfect? Well, yes. I think that's BS. Practicing well makes perfect. You get good at whatever you practice. If you practice crappy or you practice in a way that's can be completely inefficient, that's how you're going to fight. That's how you're going to train. That's how you're going to influence and potentially teach others.
Right.
So when you're looking at saying, oh, the kata, you're going to do this, and you're instinctively go into this concept or this form, etc. I think it's important to really clarify that throughout my entire karate training, Isshin Shorin-Juru, and even with just studying modules like in the Jogo's kickboxing system or the Aikitaso and Aikido, it's never explained that says, oh, this is exactly how it's going to go down.
Right. Right.
I think that's where a lot of people who are on the opposite side of the coin that say, oh, well, kata doesn't do nothing. Well, right. I hate to tell you this, what is a form? Well, according to me, a form is broken up by a combination, and a combination is broken up by fundamentals. Well, in that case, the fundamentals are essentially the building blocks to the form. Let's take a simple combination. Jab, cross, or back to side kick. Okay, that's great. That's a combination of two fundamentals, the back fist and the side kick, or the jab and the cross. Okay.
Right.
We take that into now a combination. Well, we pair up those two technical combinations and we practice that over and over and over again in a certain sequence.
Right. You got to learn the fundamentals of everything.
We have a form. We have a kata that we've chosen to develop those fundamentals. And I think it's really important to express that that's all that kata is that it's a bunch of fundamentals that come together, not necessarily saying this is how you're going to fight.
It's not set in stone, right?
Yeah, exactly. It should not be looked at as being set in stone.
Right.
But rather as a tool.
Right. You, as the artist part of the martial artist, you, with experience, this comes from experience, you will learn to improvise as necessary and pull the correct tool out of your toolbox to use as preparation. So you're gonna what am I thinking of here? There, I think it was a military veteran was talking about his combat experience, and he said going back to his basic training saved his life. I can't remember where I heard that, but one day it'll come back to me and I'll mention it again on the podcast. But he said it was the basic training, and I think police officers talk about that too. Going back to the basic training, which is your katas or your forms, your conditioning, your daily exercises. Going back to that is the basics are always the best. I think a lot of people would agree.
Absolutely.
But they're not going to work perfectly every single time. Attackers can be unpredictable. People can be unpredictable. So you should, as an artist, you would learn to improvise and be ready for that.
I agree with you 100%. When you say fundamentals are the key, I can attest that every person who's ever done a combat sport or has used it for self-defense can agree that fundamentals are legitimately the key to success. I mean, heck, even my recent fears exam for my NEAT-ON for fear system, the majority of my 3 rounds I did, the most practice or the most thrown combination was jab side kick. That was I would probably say
your test.
75% of the time. Yeah, and it's like it was like 75% I'm jabbing or I'm doing a side kick. Those are fundamentals, but it's again, bring that into a combination, and technically, if you want to put it in some form or manner, that is a form. Now,
didn't they have you do something like? Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you have to do like 100 of this and 100 of that or something? I can't remember, but it was
different. You're talking about for the Superfoot deal where you just did combinations, etc. Well, I'm talking about for the fears. Oh no, you're talking about for my Isshin Shorin-Juru exam for my.
Oh, okay, yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah, you're right. Where my father had me do 50.
He didn't cut you any slack.
What?
He didn't favor you in any way. He made you work for it.
Exactly. Thanks, Dad.
Yeah, thanks, Dad.
I appreciate that. But again, it goes down to it. And, when we're talking about practical form wise, I mean, there's a thing that people forget about when they say about forms. It's called bunkai waza, or practical application of the form. So you take a part of the form and you analyze, where is this in a real life situation? And people, I think that's a really underestimated portion of training, that a lot of people don't do that.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, go ahead.
And now we're touching into the practical aspect of forms here. Learn the forms and then analyze it, and and be honest and say, does this really work? Talk to people who've been there, talk to people who know, practice it, and go, maybe this doesn't really work. Maybe I'll just put this aside and concentrate more on something else. Isn't it true that a lot of martial artists just rely on, say, 3 basic techniques when even there's hundreds available, whatever.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, look at Bill Wallace, another one of my instructors. He has, if you go and ask him in any one of his seminars, or ask any of his guys, they'll tell you that he has a total of 5 techniques that won everyone in competition: round kick, side kick, hook kick, jab and hook, or back fist and ridge hand. Okay, those were his techniques, and obviously it worked for him. But the fact of the matter is, he practiced those over and over again. It was repetition, creating muscle memory.
Lifetime of practice,
but that's the thing. It's like, when you do that, same thing with forms. If you're practicing them well and with a good instructor to help guide you along that path, and also I would say the third aspect of that is a good training partner. And people don't think about that. For forms, they say, wait, hold on. So it's supposed to be solo. How do I have a training partner? Well, how are you going to practice bunkai waza without a training partner? An uke. You can't do it.
Yeah.
You need to have someone to help you with it. And I think that's where a lot of people kind of say, okay, well, no, that's where the forms drop off immediately. I don't know. It's like, and then you look into certain arts. You and I both have studied Iaido under Robert Carrilla Sensei.
For me,
may he rest in peace. He just passed away. For those who
of you who don't know, I'm sorry to interrupt, Jesse, but for those who don't know, Iaido is the art of drawing the sword. So this is you have different sword fighting styles, but this was all about drawing the sword and basically ending in one or 2 cuts. It's very, very quick. Ending the fight in 1 or 2 cuts.
Yeah, and the art that both Jeff and I studied under Robert Carrilla, along with many other people who did this, was Araki Munjin Sairyu. It's a samurai-based art that actually has its roots in about 500 years ago. And people have been using this for combat for a reason. And it's like, I'll never forget being drawn to Iaido for a little bit of time, but I'll never forget that was one of the most mentally challenging arts in some ways, because you weren't fighting a person, quote unquote, and you're fighting. And I remember Carrilla Sensei said, you're fighting your own demons.
Yeah, and you can't get any more form orientated than that, because I don't want to necessarily use the word precise, but one change in your wrist, the way you hold the sword, one little minute changes how skilled you're going to be. So they very much concentrate on form.
Oh, absolutely. And when you think about that, it's like, okay, well, where's the practicality in that? Well, number one, again, it goes back to what originally in our first episode we talked about. Practicality can have so many different avenues. Could be doing this for mental health, having that moment where everything stops. You can just focus on what you're doing. Or are you looking for practical application? Are you looking for whatever reason you choose to be doing this? You can really emphasize that practicality comes in so many different flavors. So, and I mean, there's a reason why people kept arts with forms for hundreds of years. I mean, think about it. You have all these old masters over in Okinawa that still practice form. Shorin-ryu is a very common system that does a lot of focus on forms.
Right.
The reason why. But yeah, go ahead.
Okay, we were just talking about Iaido, which is samurai fighting each other, or swordsmen fighting each other. So how does that apply today? Well, you're not going to get into a sword fight today, I would assume. Most people aren't. And if you do, yeah, it's not going to end well. But anyways, so how is this practical? Well, it's not that that's practical, but you can learn so much from discipline, or whatever your art is. Whoever is watching this and you have your art, I think you could relate that to be the best martial artist that you can be takes hard work and discipline and daily training. So we're in a day and age where things that worked in the past, Okinawan karate, to defend the emperor, defend whoever, maybe that's not going to apply today, but the fundamentals of the basic forms still apply to this day. I don't care what art you're training, as long as it's basically legitimate art. And today we face different rules by law. You can't be too extreme with your martial art, or you're the one that's going to wind up in trouble. You have some explaining to do in front of 12 people who don't know you, and let's face it, 12 people who may not. I'm talking about juries. May not be. You can get some educated people, you can get some not so educated people. So don't think about when you do something in real life. I might be able to beat this with a good lawyer and whatever, and I was in the right. No, you don't. The only people judging are those 12 people. Those are the most important people in a trial, not the public opinion or the judge. It's going to come down to those 12 people, and that's scary. Because I wish Scott was here, because he would kind of understand. He would understand this, but so today and where I'm going with this is you can be the best warrior martial artist out there, and you can kill a man. Let's be honest. But should you? Do you want to wind up in prison? Most people don't.
Well, here's the thing you have to remember. It goes back to the old saying of, I'd rather be tried by 12 than carried out by 6.
Right.
At the end of the day, I have to come home to my family. And if you're looking at practicality and training, does that leave any form of the forms? Is there room for forms? My answer is absolutely, if that is a part of your art's history. If that's not part of your art's history, maybe that's something you should look into.
Right.
But again, if your art includes forms, don't throw them out.
Right.
Read them, study them, but more importantly, look for the deeper meaning behind it. I mean,
they have value. They really do.
They all do, and especially look at Aikitaso. We talked briefly offline about this, that you can tell a person in the Aikido world if they study Aikitaso or not, and if they actually put a lot of their emphasis into training in the Aikitaso. If they do, fantastic.
Let's tell them what Aikitaiso is, if you don't mind, Stephen. Explain.
Yeah, sure. So in the Aikido world, the founder of Aikido, Morihei Ueshiba, had many different students, one of which was a man by the name of Koichi Toei, credited for being the one to bring Aikido to America via Hawaii. He's also the one who founded what's called the Shinshin Taitsu Ryu, aka what would later become Key Society Aikido. Okay. And with Key Society Aikido, he developed these exercises that were they basically, quote unquote, strengthen a person's ki. Now, I'm not going to get mystical on our viewers here and whatnot.
And they actually apply to a self-defense. So even though we do some weird things, there's a reason for it. I would say every one of them has a practical aspect to it that uses the other person's energy.
Exactly, but these are solo exercises that Koichi Toei put together for the ability for a person to be able to train in Aikido. Because at one point,
It's our
After
form of
Osense,
conditioning. It's
yeah,
our Aikido's form of conditioning.
exactly. And you have to remember, at one point, after Osensei passed away, Koichi Toei was told by Kisamura Ueshiba, the son of the founder of Aikido, saying, you don't have permission to be training in Aikido or be teaching certain techniques. He actually had this written document. And so Koichi Toei said, no, I'm just teaching key exercises, aka Aikitaso.
Right.
And in reality, what he was doing, he was still teaching Aikido, but these were the quote unquote solo forms of it. And he proceeded to do this, and it really shows because it taught a lot of weight underside, taught about how to take Kizushi, taught a tremendous amount of what can I say? How to condition? You're right, conditioning.
Oh, you get to learn valuable things. Yeah, like breathing, balance, the practical self-defense part of it, and centering yourself. In Aikido, we do a lot of centering. This is you thinking with your core, thinking in the center of your body. So I won't get into that too much right now, but the Aikitaisos are our discipline for our techniques and our overall lost my train of thought here, but anyways, overall, our daily practice of Aikido, it helps us stay centered and focused.
Exactly. I agree with you 100%. And it does. And again, you can tell a lot about a person's training in Aikido by whether or not they do study the Aikitaso.
Sure.
Their form will be better. Their weight underside will be way better. They'll be able to take Kizushi, in my opinion, way better.
Right.
Because there's a lot of practice over and over again. Again, strengthening the form to help the fundamentals, if that makes sense.
Right.
And
so,
I want to talk about one more thing too before we finish up this topic. You bring up the concept of shadow boxing.
I was just going to talk about that.
I don't necessarily look at that as a form, funny enough.
No.
And there's a reason why. And this is where it's going to get kind of confusing in some ways, but it makes sense. Shadow boxing.
Yeah, I agree. It's not really a form. It's more of, I'll let you finish it, but it's more of your way of, I don't know, I'm not improvising, but in Aikido we call it
Kiwaza.
Yeah, Kiwaza. Thank you. It's just free form, free fighting, and I think that's shadow boxing. I think the equivalent.
It would be the equivalent, absolutely.
Solo.
Yeah, in shadow boxing, you're running through combinations, etc., but it's never a set form.
Right.
Never. Although it's solo, they have that same concept. Yes, it's cardio. They have this exact same concept. Yes, are they working on fundamentals? Absolutely. But at no point is there a set concept where they're matching things. I'm going to do this A, B, C, D, A, B, C, D.
Right.
A, C, B, or B, A, C, or whatever it is that the person's working on. In correspondence with forms, it has to be A, B, C, D, A, B, C, D, and so on and so forth for who's ever teaching the form, who's ever working on the form. That's just a commonality of it. And I think that's just something to keep in mind. But when we're looking at shadow boxing, and it's very valuable. I think it's a very valuable tool, but it's not a form. It has a practical place because you get a chance to work on technique.
It has forms in it.
Exactly. There we go.
But some people might consider it a form. It's or back to what we first talked about was, is this stuff necessary? Or kata is necessary? Shadow boxing necessary? Is Aikitaiso? I'm sure some other arts have their own name for what their forms are. I don't know them right now.
Yeah, and going back to think is shadow boxing actual practical deal? I remember when I was getting ready for my NEET on with Bill Wallace, I gave him a call and I was telling him how I was working on doing like 9 rounds of shadow boxing in a single drill. And he proceeded to go off and tell me, he's like, don't do that, Steven. He's like, do maybe 3 or 4 rounds of shadow boxing and then go hit the heavy bag. And his philosophy was that you can get more benefit with that, with studying the boxing concepts. But then when we're working for the exam, we're also doing leg shadow boxing, meaning we're doing 2-3 kicks per combination,
right,
for endurance. Again, it has its benefit, and I still work on that to this day. But again, that's not a form.
Right.
So do forms have practicality? Absolutely, they do, as long as you modify them. If you can modify the techniques and break it down bit by bit,
right,
the combinations, absolutely, they have practical meaning to them. But again, now, one last thing we got to talk about for practicality was, can we adapt the form for practical use? Yes. And what do I mean by that? Let's take, for example, Pinon Godon. One of the last few techniques you have in it is this big jumping, spinning technique where you jump up there, you just come down in an X block. That's great for the 20-year-old or the teenager or the 30-year-old. Am I going to do that in my 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and above? No.
Yeah.
So again, that has to be modified to more of a practical training.
Yeah. And if you don't mind me, interjecting a little on that.
Yeah, go for it, bud.
I particularly look at something like that. Like, of course, that can be devastating if you connected with somebody's body, somebody's face with that kind of kick. But in the real world, are you going to get a chance to pull that off? It depends on who you were up against.
Yeah.
A highly skilled fighter, I don't really think so.
No.
Someone who is, attacking you in some way or another or whatever, and you manage to get a moment to do that, in Aikido we call it a temi, but it's basically striking, to take their attention, or make a little contact, get their attention, and maybe even get them off balance a little bit. Then you can apply, then you can do that if you see it right there and you're in the right position, you can.
Absolutely. I agree with you. And again, it's based on situational awareness. And that's probably the most practical, one of the more practical things you can learn about forms or from forms is situational and spatial awareness.
Right.
I mean, when you look at like Sanchin Kata, that's all you're working on besides condition.
Right. And I'd like to, this will be a question for the viewers, because I have no experience in MMA or BJJ yet, but,
yeah. We're working on them, guys.
It'll be on my bucket list when I'm 8. No, I'm just kidding, but it'll be on my list. So forms. Now, I'm not aware if they have actual forms or katas per se. They're not going to be called katas, but I do know that they do conditioning. So would you agree with me, Stephen, that in a way, in a sense, is a form of kata, or because it's a daily practice, it's daily conditioning. Therefore, again, it's going into their muscle memory. An MMA practitioner, it's going into their muscle memory. And wouldn't you consider that to be the same?
I would say, as long as there is very clear understanding of what is the purpose for it. What do I mean by that? Like, I remember there's a part of my training that I dabbled in Kyokushin karate for a little bit of time. And I'll never forget coming home with huge welts on the inner portions of my thighs. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is kind of crazy. I'm talking big welts. And it's like, what was the purpose of it? And they would say, oh, this is going to be good for conditioning. Well, here's the problem. My wonderful wife, who is a nurse, does a lot of heavy-based research. And she looks for evidence-based articles. And I agreed with her. Let's do this article based. Let's see what we could find out about this. And it was funny because when we looked at it, at the evidence based on knowing her knowledge in medicine, that would actually do more harm for it. So when you look at it, it's like, what was the purpose of that conditioning? What was the purpose of that form, if you want to call it that? So there wasn't anything practical because you're going to cause blood clots. You're going to cause X, Y, and Z injuries so often.
Yeah, it sure is a younger man's game, but then you pay for it when you're older.
Exactly.
So if you're toughening up your legs, you're toughening up your arms and all this stuff, constant, I'm sure it's good for a while.
But here's the thing.
If you're competing, or whatever. But
conditioning is great. As long as you're doing it appropriate. There's, in the words of Bill Wallace, there's life after sport. And if you're not doing it proper, you're going to pay for it later on.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. But then again, you look at, for example, getting back to the topic wise of saying, is this a form? It can be. If you're looking at it as, is this a regular deal that we're doing on a regular basis? Yes, you can say there is form in that because there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. In that which case, yes, this is a form.
Yeah. But apples to oranges, okay, no, it's not. I'd say no, it's not exactly a form, but it's still a daily practice, and so this could be debatable. I think
I think so, and I would love to hear from the viewers.
Me too.
What their ideas are in regards to form, and when you're looking at form, is there the conditioning part? Like, for example, when you're doing the Santin test, that's another part of conditioning where you're taking hard punishment while doing the kata.
Mm-hmm.
You saw me do this also with one of my exams as well, with the Shorinji rule, where I'm doing the kata and I'm getting pounded on while doing it.
Right.
And there's a reason why that has to happen. So I asked the viewers, guys, do you consider your guys' conditioning forms and techniques actual kata? That'd be an interesting question for those.
Whatever the term is,
whatever. If it's dealing with a set form,
right,
that involves conditioning, does that count into the forms? And in that case, is it practical? We'll see what the viewers have to say on that matter. All right.
Yeah, I expect some interesting comments from that, which is great.
Exactly. I agree with you 100%. Well, guys, this is all the time we have for tonight. Thank you for joining us here at the Daily Practical. Technique of the week. Today I'm going to be demonstrating, for those of you who are joining us, I'm Stephen Jokel Sensei, head instructor of the Defend AC School here in Peoria, Arizona. Today we are going to look at getting to a variation of a technique called Hiji Katame. Hiji meaning elbow, Katame meaning lock. Okay. You can also see the same concept in like a reverse Gokyo and other techniques within multiple martial arts systems. Okay. Today, though, we're going to deal with it coming in from a lead hook or a rear hook. Let's go with a rear hook for the camera's sake. Okay. You see a lot of this concept, the fear system, and other self-defense concepts. Okay. We're going to show you two entryways. Okay. Actually, it's one entryway, two ways to set up. Still the same technique, though. So that lead hook, I have to be able to avoid that. If I just put the arm up here, without doing like that dead arm block that we've shown in previous episodes, he's going to come around. I want to shoot over this. Okay, so if he comes in really hard, boom, look where that hook punch went. It went behind me. It didn't graze me, but I can safely say that I did not get hit in a vital area. So as that's coming in, though, I'm still coming on the inside. I have to worry about something. That's a problem. So I need to take his balance. Or in Aikido, we refer to that as taking kazushi, taking balance. Okay, so I'm going to do that one of two ways. One being slowly, boom, round elbow, okay? Or two, go to the side. I'm going to the side of his face. Most people will say, oh, I'm going to come straight to the front of his face. Well, watch what he's going to do, okay? Oh, well, he just batted that away. He stopped it, and more importantly, I gave him an opening. That's a problem. Try stopping that to the side of the face. No. It's hard to stop the side of the face. Reason being, the head will go wherever the ear will go. That's why when you hit the person in the side of the head, the person will stumble because they've lost their sense of balance. It's weird when you attack the ear. For some reason, that's how it just happens. So as he's coming in, one, okay? That's one and two, okay? One being here. Notice I'm protected. Two being either the round elbow or the side of the ear. I prefer going to the side of the ear because number one, it's a lot more sneaky. He doesn't expect it. Yeah. And it's frankly way harder to defend against that round elbow. And number three. So as we go through, 1, 2, I'm going to take this hand. I'm going to drop a big circle going around, and I lock it back to him. If I just try to go through and he pulls out away, we got a problem. Or even pull back the elbow, try that. Thank you. I'm in a really awkward position. So what I want to do is lock him. Notice I'm holding on to him, okay, as I'm locking him out. All I'm doing at that point is extending into his lower ribs and extending. I can talk to him.
This pressure here prevents me from, I can't turn in because of the pressure right there.
Exactly. If I want to talk to him, say, hey buddy, let's talk. Yeah. This could be a family relative who's had a little too much to drink, or a friend that you just got into an argument with. Or it could be an assailant. You can play the what if game all day long. The matter is, secure it, okay? If he still wants to continue though, and tries to punch, all I do is here, go straight up. As you can see at that point, I'm almost going to be breaking his elbow. I'm going to be dislocating his shoulder and causing a lot of pain. It's hard to fight when you're focused on your pain. Plain and simple. So again, let's stick with the ear one because it seems to be a little bit more fun to work with. So one, I'm shooting in. I also notice I'm moving my entire body inward. Okay, I'm protecting myself. Number two, shoot to the side of the face, the ear. There is a nerve lock as well from right here that you can work with if you wish. But if not, focus on catching the ear. And three, lock it up. If you want, lock it up with the second elbow. You can continue if you wish. A little bit more fluid. Let's go with fluid speed. Yeah. And that is technique of the week. Have fun, train safe, be practical in your training. We'll see you next week.